Hello, Steve. Got your Solexes finished and tested. I'm going to do a little introduction and then a cold start test for you and run them up and show you how they adjust. And have been letting these cold soak out here, so got a true cold start test. We'll go over a few things. When installing the carburetors, you're going to want to install the carburetors loosely. First of all, make sure that your choke levers are in the center. It is possible to put these on backwards, so choke levers go into the center. And then what you're going to do is assemble the carburetors on the intake manifold with the instructions I'm going to provide, but have them loosely installed so they will move around. And then what you want to do is stick your intake manifold on here and do the final tightening on the carburetors, because there's enough movement in the carburetors up and down and left and right that if you tighten them down without putting your airlog in place, you will not be able to get the airlog in place and you'll be really frustrated. When you are installing your fuel lines, you stabilize this fuel fitting in the float bolt cover, and then you do all your wrenching on this fitting right here. We need to stabilize this fitting so it doesn't mess up the threads in the float bolt cover. So always use 2 wrenches. Something else that will help you install these carburetors are 1/4-inch drive wobble sockets. You don't need a 1/2-inch drive or even 3/8-inch drive to secure the Solexes and tighten them down to the intake manifold. And make sure that you have all your bushings and your wave washers installed. Like I said, I'll have that in my instructions I'll send with the carburetors. They've all been fully machined. The only thing that you get to adjust is going to be the idle mixture screw, the idle speed screw, and then you can adjust these right here. These levers are what your choke cable goes down here and catches these 2 levers, and these little jam nuts and screws right here adjust the levers in their arc, so you can have them adjusted to where your cable goes right down into the levers, and you can adjust that as you see fit. Because what you want to make sure is that you have as little friction as possible on the choke cable. These levers are coming up on an arc. Your cable is coming straight down, and you got like 3 feet of cable that you're pulling on, and it makes it for a very tough pull on the dash. And so I also recommend people make sure you got your choke cable lubricated, and then when you're pulling the choke, push on your accelerator, which takes pressure off of the choke cable, then you can pull your choke cable. That helps a whole bunch. Your idle speed is going to be adjusted here, and that's I will set the idle where it's supposed to be, but you can adjust it at your convenience. And the idle mixture screws, I'm going to take the camera off now, and the idle mixture screw is right here. That's one for each barrel. This one's a dummy, don't touch this one. And this is the idle mixture screw that you're going to be used for adjusting the carburetors when they're warmed up and idling. And what you're doing is you're screwing this in until the engine stumbles, you screw it out till the engine stumbles, and you get the midpoint where the engine runs the best. I will have done that already for you on my engine, my test engine, but you can certainly adjust this to on your test, to fit your engines, because each engine will be a little bit different, and so you can adjust these as need be. Your adjustments are going to be very minute. You're just going to be adjusting a little bit like this, not very much. Make sure you, when you adjust, when the idle is set, it has a relationship with these screws right here and the counterweight for the second barrel right here. So what you want to make sure is you have just a slight amount of wiggle on the counterweight, or almost no wiggle at all, and that comes from these screws right here. This is a jam screw right here, and this is a screw that goes down and impinges on the second barrel throttle shaft, and that's attached to your first barrel throttle shaft, which then is attached to your idle set screw. So the relationship is, they're all tied together, and so if you adjust here, make sure that your adjustment stays the same here. The issue that you can have is if this is down too tight, it can artificially open the first barrel and increase the idle artificially, simply because you got your screw down too far. And again, the end result is you will have just a little bit of movement. Note a little bit of movement in here, and if you have no movement whatsoever, you have to make sure you're not artificially increasing the idle. All right, I hope that makes sense. It's a tough concept. Also, there's a reason the factory gave you a priming lever on the fuel pump right here, and you can see we got some resistance. So I'm going to pump up fuel, and if you get no resistance, it's either because your fuel pump is not working or because it's off the cam, or it's on the cam that drives the fuel pump. And so what you need to do is bump your engine over until you get resistance, and you can hear and feel fuel being pumped. And that's why they put this on here, because after a few days of sitting still, the carburetors will need to be primed with fuel. There we go. Now we got fuel coming up. All right, and we don't have much. All right, no resistance. So we're fully primed in terms of fuel. And the only way to adjust these carburetors is when they are warmed up. So I'll be doing that pretty soon. And also, by disconnecting the linkage, you need to be able to run these things individually and adjust them individually. And then, at the very end, you adjust your linkage with the throttle with this turnbuckle right here. And your goal is to be able to pop this in place. So and the idle doesn't change. You're also going to be monitoring the second barrel to make sure they're closed, and they will be, of course. And your tool of choice is the synchrometer, BK1 to 35 kilograms per hour. Right out of the box, this thing works perfectly on the Solexes. And what we're going to do now is, let's see, we get you'll figure out how your car works best, but I'm going to give this a pump. Going to close the choke, and we'll see what we got in way of a cold start. I'd say it's very good for having sat for several days. And you can see that as you pull the choke, it also moves your throttle. That's your fast idle. So you're actually opening and closing the throttle. How about that for cold? So now I'm going to rev it up to where we can get the engine warmed up and do the final adjusting. I'll show you how to do it. We're about to, thermostat's about to open. Thermostat just opened. We got some warmed up carburetors. Now let's do some tuning. Alright, first thing we're going to do is disconnect the carburetors from each other. Alright. Disconnected. Now we're going to check our second barrels. All we want is for these things to be pulling as little air as possible. The factory setting would be about 2 or 2.5. And with the good machine work that we've done, you see it doesn't even move. The needle doesn't even move. So that's where you get your good idle from, right there. Alright, so we're good there. Next we're going to check our airflow through each throat, which is a measure of, we want those to be balanced. Turn the camera. Alright, so what we got here is, looks like it's 6. And here is 6, and that's because I've already adjusted these, obviously, and this is where that's your idle speed. So if we want a higher idle speed, we're going to dial this in, say a quarter turn. Quarter turn, idle speed goes up, and we're at 7 there. And 7 there, and that's how that works. Just do them uniformly, and you get the same result each time. So I'm going to dial these back down. Dial that back to 6 here. 6 and 6. Okay. Next, idle mixture screw. I'm going to raise this up a little bit. Again, holding on here, make sure we don't have a runaway carburetor. Idle mixture screw right here. I'm going to dial it in and back out, and you'll hear the engine start to falter. You hear the idle dropped. Picking back up. Starts to falter again. So we want our sweet spot right in between here, and we're going to keep adjusting it until we get the best running. Best idle speed. And let's try that there. Snap our linkage back on. And you hear the idle adjusted upwards because that's because the idle is the linkage is not adjusted correctly. Didn't change much, so now we can rev it up. Alright. Now then, if it popped back through the carburetor, that means this is too lean and you would want to give it some more fuel. And that would be by screwing it out, give it more fuel if it popped back to the carburetor. And that's what you do on both carburetors. I'm going to lower the idle a little bit more. Just because I can, because these idle so well. There's low. And there's 6, 5, 5.5, 6. And you can see that. a real nice idle. And if I try to put this on here, it adjusts the idle speed, so my linkage has to be adjusted. There we go. Real nice carburetors. Do a hot start. Okay. Got some real nice carburetors for you, Steve. I appreciate your patience on this project. Let's see if there's anything else I can think of. Oh, fuel. I know I was going to mention. Fuel cleanliness. You've got to have the cleanest possible fuel. Make sure that your fuel tank does not have anything in it that any rust or any debris. Check your fuel filters. Your fuel filter, make sure it's in good shape and it's filtering. But you absolutely have to have clean fuel on these carburetors. And in fact, I'm going to go get a different sized screwdriver, and I'll show you one thing that's critical in terms of the operation of the carburetors. Be right back. Alright, what I'm going to show you is the G55 idle jet. I got the wrong screwdriver. Be right back. Okay, sorry about the delay in the operation. Alright, now then, what we're going to look at is the G55 idle jet right here. This is what controls the idle. This jet and this jet only is what controls the idle. So if you lose your idle, but you can rev up the engine and it'll rev up, but then when you back off on it and it dies, it's this jet right here. Real easy to deal with and service. You unscrew it and you see you got a very minute hole, and when I say minute, that's like, it's called a G55, and the 55 stands for 0.55 millimeters, and just the teeniest fleck of grit that you can't even see will get in there and stop that up. So you either blow it out or put a little hairbrush bristle in there. Anyway, you need to get that hole cleaned out. If you happen to be on the road and this happens to you because there's debris in your fuel system, you can unscrew this one right here and unscrew the one on the other side, because that's the identical jet but it isn't in use, and you can swap jets. On the road you can even use a screwdriver is best, but you probably could even use a quarter or a dime to get down there and unscrew them. But that's the only thing that controls your idle, and so fuel cleanliness is critical. Now, while we've been talking, letting it sit, let's see how it starts. Not bad for having taken the jet out. Anyway, got you a good set of carburetors. I think you'll be very pleased. Thank you for your patience.